What's up, everyone? This is Mayan Gordon. We are live at 5, and we actually have a three-way today. Very, very exciting. We have Courtney Harring and Shanae. Is it Moret?
Yeah, Moret.
Okay, nice. Very, very beautiful. Is that French, or where is that coming
from?
from?
It is French, actually. It's from my great-grandpa.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we have some really, really special guests today. But before we kind of get going with the interview itself, you guys know what to do. Please post in the comments at least one thing that you're grateful for today. And where in the world are you guys even watching from? I'm coming to you from Spokane, Washington. That's Washington State, not DC. I get asked that a lot because people have no idea where Spokane is. Where are you guys watching from, Courtney and Shanae?
So right now I am in Rochester, New York. So I'm at my parents' house.
Nice. How about you?
And I'm at my house in South Florida. And
awesome.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. So I'd love for each of you to kind of introduce yourselves. Courtney, why don't you go ahead first? If you had to describe just who you are as a person, outside of even what you do for work, how would you describe yourself?
Oh my goodness. Well, kind of sporadic, all over the place sometimes. Kind, I guess, generous, and I try to listen.
Hey, that's good. Trying is all we can ever ask for, trying our best, right? And how about you, Shanae?
I guess outside of work, I guess like creative and I don't know, like that's how I would basically describe myself, kind of creative and more of like I love to learn. So
a lifelong learner.
I like to just always learn. So I'm either reading or just trying to better whatever skills that I have, like even outside of work.
That's awesome. So let's bring it back. What do you guys do for work? What do you do for a living? And how did you get into whatever the space is that you're in now?
That's always funny. Sorry, I always laugh when people ask, because it is funny how we met. But basically, we have like two sides of the company, but we are all together. We don't do anything alone. So I do most of like the medical billing, credentialing, just getting people ready for insurance, working with, just healthcare providers, filling their space or creating their practices.
Tell me more about that. Sorry, real quick before Shanae goes. Give me a little bit more context. Like, who is it that particularly your business services? And where did you discover that need or that value that your business provides? Like, how did it come about?
Goodness. So we'll both have similar stories, but it'll be different. So first is my son was diagnosed with liver disease when he was 10 weeks old. So I know how important, doctors, surgeons, just physicians, just the healthcare system is so important. So when I kind of went through that with my son, it's going to go, more into exactly how everything came about. But we have a huge respect for the healthcare field. And I wanted to figure out a way that I could still be in healthcare and also be at home with my son. So we created billing, like things that we could do, remotely.
Okay. So, and I'll let you speak right after this, Shanae, but it sounds like essentially personal connection, like you have a very deep personal connection with it. And then also your just desires for the way you wanted to live your life around freedom and flexibility.
Absolutely.
How about you, Shanae? Like, what got you into it? Was it something also that had kind of a personal connection, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I'm stage 4 cancer survivor, so I understand the healthcare space very well because I basically lived in and out of the hospital for like 10 years. Additionally, like just through college and stuff, and like through even my first job after college, which was at Audi. Like people recognized that I was a good copywriter. So I essentially got to a point in my life where I was like, I understand and love healthcare. And, as this pandemic has proven, I kind of also understood that healthcare was always an industry that is needed, right? You have to go to the hospital, like you have to get your health checked. So from like being a mom in a place in my life where like I needed stability. I really took like my talent for copywriting and then my passion for healthcare, kind of meshed the two. But to answer your previous question, is that when Courtney and I connected, we recognized the need, because if you understand healthcare, that then you understand that after they get their credentialing, they don't have anybody to bill for unless they have residents or patients. So at that point, they're essentially asking, do you know anyone in the marketing space or in the like to build a website, the web copy, just like everything. They don't have any of that creative thing. And usually what happens is that they have a vendor for credentialing, they have a vendor for billing, they have a vendor for their website, they have a vendor for their marketing. And they're so busy that what usually happens is that they're sold by someone who's a really good seller on, you know, a $5,000 to $8,000 to $10,000 a month retainer. And they don't even, number one, know how to track the progress of the vendor or if they're even delivering good work because they don't understand the creative and the data. And number two, the vendor usually does not understand the healthcare space very well. These are usually people that are doing tech or like other industries. And when it gets to healthcare, you have to know who you're marketing for, because marketing for a Medicaid patient is different than marketing for a private pay patient. So usually after like spending 40 or 50 grand on a firm, they usually get the gist that they don't understand what they're doing. Right. So, and a lot of the times it's because they're just so busy managing so many vendors. So we recognized that need early on, and we were like, okay, well, why don't we just create a one-stop shop for everything? So they just have to check in on us, and we make the process extremely simple and extremely easy for them to understand.
Right. Okay, this is fascinating to me, I have to say, because I think really every single person has some type of relatively deep connection with the healthcare space, whether that's personally or a family member. So I would say for me, I have personal connection through, I'd say there was a time probably 5-6 years ago when I just really wasn't being very healthy and had kind of some daily symptoms from that of just like not feeling good. And like every time I ate, my stomach hurt, and just having to, I think a lot of people honestly are in this space where they're not,
especially now.
And I thought something was wrong with me. I thought something must be wrong for me to be in this discomfort and pain every day. That's not normal.
Yeah, it's not. Like pain's usually a signal that something's wrong.
Correct. Yeah, and so I would go into the doctor, and I had health insurance that I was paying, you know, $500 a month for, and still had to pay the entire amount of my doctor's visit because had a, you know, $5,000 deductible that I had to meet before they'd cover anything. And all they would suggest is that I get tests. There was no real suggestions around changing habits or even looking into what my habits were in depth. And so I paid, you know, thousands of dollars for some tests that were completely inconclusive, where they were like, you seem fine. I was like, but I'm not fine. And just through that process, really at one point said, well, I'm just going to take the responsibility on myself to figure it out, since no one really cares enough or really is set up.
I mean, it's good. You have to be like your own ambassador, or like if it's a child, you have to really push sometimes. Like, no, there's something wrong here.
Yeah. And then I would say, you know, my family connection to it. So my dad is a male midwife. He's actually a PhD.
Oh, that's so cool.
In midwifery right now. And that came from because my youngest sister, I'm the eldest of 4 in my family, and my youngest sister was born
God bless you.
very, very premature. So I think 3 months premature. And had to spend, you know, the first 6 months, I think it was, in the NICU. And my dad and my parents would go in almost every single day to visit. And because my dad already had a pretty strong healthcare background, he was a nurse practitioner. He noticed that the nurses were not doing things correctly all the time in terms of like handling this premature baby and in terms of some of the other things. And it made him just become incredibly passionate about like making changes in that space.
Yeah, they're rough with that. My daughter was premature, and they'll like flip her, like they look so like, you know, like they're not going to hurt them, but to them, they're so used to it. You know what I mean?
Sometimes they're just not well trained, or again, I think what you hit the nail on the head. There's so much going on in a hospital that there's often a lack of something in a certain space, whether that's
100%.
training, whether that's oversight, whatever it might be. So I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit about kind of your view, since you have a more kind of closely connected view of just the medical space in general here. And again, we're talking about here in the United States.
Right.
Different. We don't want to go. I know.
Like I have no idea, but I've heard great things about other countries.
Right. Exactly.
So what's your guys' opinion just of the general state of medicine, let's say in the United States? And where do you see some of these gaps that exist that either you see people trying to work on or you see some progress in? Like, let's keep it a little bit positive and hopeful.
Sure. Well, I can give you kind of like a couple examples. One, when my son was diagnosed with liver disease, we did kind of go through what you went through, meaning they didn't know what was wrong with him. They still don't know what's wrong with him. And everything was inconclusive, but he was, conjugated bilirubin. So it wasn't the one with the lights. Like people are like, put him under, that had nothing to do with it. His liver was not working. Okay. So I will never forget, when I had him, he was like only 10 weeks old and, they were talking about chemo and all that stuff. And he had to go through a biopsy and 9 people came into my room. Wow. You know what I mean? So that was like, first of all, startling. Then it was like, I didn't even get the, the results yet. So we're already talking about things like ahead of time. And then when we came back, it was like, oh, no, haha, just kidding. Cancer. No.
Right. And they didn't necessarily think about like how all of that affected you emotionally. No. Yeah.
Correct. So that was number one. I do feel like that experience, and Shanae and I have talked about this a lot of times, kind of put me into like the postpartum depression because postpartum can go for quite a long time.
Years.
So when I met Shanae, he was already 2, Shanae?
Yeah, like
turning 3?
Turning 2.
They were turning 2. Yeah, turning 2. So like I still had it. So this is how I feel. I feel that the work that we do makes, especially the private practice doctors, right? The small ones, the ones that really know the community. I want them to just do your job. Don't think about getting paid, right? Don't think about how many clients are going to come because Shanae's going to do it, right? Don't think about, just, I guess, just the workflow, right, of your practice. Think about just getting people help and the services that they need. That's what we want to do because we have had those issues with some doctors and bedside manner.
So real quick before you answer. So you think that a lot of sometimes that negative bedside manner has to do with them being preoccupied about some of these other issues that you guys take care of?
Absolutely. I do know for a fact, 2016, a medical doctor who was in a hospital was only getting about $150 an hour. I know like some people will be like, well, whoa, that's a lot. But it's not when you don't see your family for a long time. You're doing 24-hour shifts. Yeah. You have a crappy, work-life balance. You're living in the hospital.
You might be $200,000 in debt.
Correct.
I mean, it used to be like, and the thing is like we realized early on, we work with some private practice like physicians, but like we realized that it's just the state of things, right? If they don't differentiate, they will go out of business. Like that's just the way that it is now. If they're slow to move, if they're not connecting and like really building a community, like just to stay on the positive side of things, I think that obviously with the whole pandemic, there's obviously been a lot of funding and interest now in healthcare and like a lot of startups that are coming out with providing like whether it's remote patient monitoring for like older people or like specific conditions or like more analytics in the healthcare space or more technology for doctors to maybe see 30 to 40% of their patient load virtually, and save everybody time, whether it's just, different like kind of medical devices. There's just like a lot of creation and energy right now in healthcare. And there's a lot of people that obviously have seen the stability of the industry and are investing money into that. And when, there's resources and stuff that creates possibility. Unfortunately, as we know, like a lot of startups just misspend their marketing and they don't know how to build brand, and they just throw like 80% of whatever on paid ads, and then they go out of business. So hopefully that doesn't happen to them, but we're here to help.
So I have some questions. And before I kind of ask them, I just want to give a couple shout outs to some people watching right now. What's going on? Naveen or Navin? I'm pretty sure it's Naveen. Let me know which way is correct there. Sharonica, how's it going? You have an awesome name, by the way. Yeah, Kamal, how's it going? Falin, what's good, you guys? Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you guys have questions yourself about the healthcare industry, now is a perfect time to ask them and get some really amazing answers. So when you're talking about some of these practices going out of business, I think that statement might even be a shock to a lot of people, because it seems like, certainly from the outside, that they are all crushing it. And what I mean by that is, here in Spokane, Washington, I have to book in just a regular doctor's appointment. It might take me 2 weeks to a full month before there's an appointment even available in some of these practices. Is that different? Is that just a localized in Spokane thing? Is that something you guys have had?
Well, I mean, so like on the back end, basically what's happening like in private practice are like huge healthcare companies are just, they're buying them out. So they're at a stage like where basically their back is against the wall, and they may think that their practice, what happens is that they think their practice is usually more than it actually is. So they're evaluating it at, let's say, $1 million. But the thing is that patients connect with the physician. Correct. So once they sell, that valuation really isn't $1 million, because half of those patients are going to leave because, it's going to be a new doctor and they don't have that relationship with the physician. Right. So then, a big company that's just going to either take their patients because they have a marketing team that like understands community and is building that connection, even though they're huge, is going to come in and offer them what they feel is a low ball deal. They either take it or they don't. But if they don't, there's obviously the risk of, the bigger guy has more funds, more everything. So, and they have more of a team. So they get burned out trying to keep up. And the thing is, the good thing about the whole coronavirus, of course, like let's just keep on the positive side, is that we've been warning a lot of these smaller physicians, like, hey, it's really time to like invest in your online brand. Like they just keep putting it off. But, they had a rude awakening when the coronavirus hit, because they had no choice but to reach their patients online. And obviously the physicians that thrived were the ones that had previously invested in their brand online. Yep. And that's just something that, and of course they're weary of it. Like the thing is with the whole marketing and healthcare thing is that by the time they get to us, they've already been jaded. Right. They've been jaded by like the fancy digital marketing agencies that have overpromised and underdelivered time and time again, that don't understand the healthcare space. They've been jaded by billers. They've been jaded by insurance credentialers. So by the time they get to us, it's like, we had to learn very early on that they can tell BS by the time they get to us, and we're not BSing anything. So it's kind of like once they start working with us, it's such a relief. Just our communication processes, how simple we make it for them. We make it where they do as little work as possible, even like from building just everything, their messaging, just everything. So it's just unfortunate. They're taking advantage of a lot of times, but if they don't keep up with the times by finding a good team, they'll be bought out by a bigger conglomerate.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And how does that affect, like, how does getting bought out affect kind of some of these practices in terms of like the people who work there? Do they like retain their jobs? Are they out of
Sometimes
like,
it's just
sometimes.
yeah.
Sometimes, and when you're talking about takes 2 weeks to get an appointment, I'm going to tell you exactly what that is.
Tell me.
Yes. It has nothing to do with
With them killing it.
Okay, that's not what it is. It's called people are tired. They're lazy in the back. They're lazy with getting the bills out. Probably not showing up that much and really don't care, right? Now, I know that sounds super crappy, like what I'm saying, but it's not that hard to turn over a patient quickly. It's not that hard to answer the phone and get an appointment. That means that your staff is tired, they don't like your workflow, and they don't believe in your values.
That makes a lot of sense.
So the thing is, like, understanding the whole fundamental of all of these problems and why the big companies are growing and why private practice is dying, basically, is because doctors are not business people. Right. Like, they're not taught all of this in medical schools. So they just think they have these funds and they hire their admin team, they hire their billers, they hire their marketers, and all they see is like the spend. They don't see the result of that. They're not good management people, like, in terms of like delegating other people. They only know what they know and what they train for. Now, the people that run the big companies are run by entrepreneurs. They're run by people that understand business. So you have like an army of business people, and then you have these small private practice doctors that like only 1 in a million really understands business. And that's why that's the real issue, is that, I mean, to overcome that would be like changing some of their training and education in medical school.
Exactly. Okay, so it sounds like a lot of the issues are really operational in a sense
that they have no idea what they're doing.
No idea.
Like they have no idea.
So it's the same reason why if you would go to the doctor and have to wait an hour and a half past when your actual appointment was, it's because just that workflow is not even set up at all.
Is a mess. And I'll tell you exactly what that means. That means that no one's knocking on the door saying, hey, this is a 20-minute appointment. It's time to go. Right?
Yeah,
like, you gotta turn those people around, and then those are the same ones that are going to say that they're broke. Yeah, because you're only seeing one patient an hour.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you gotta... It is
manage your time better. It's the same reason why anyone who says that they're way too busy and they're doing only 2 or 3 things. It's like, well, you're not doing them efficiently or that effectively.
That's
because you're not managing your time and you don't have processes and systems set up to help you do that.
Correct.
So what kind of options are there outside of you guys? Are there like options for when a new doctor is setting up their practice? Or is it just like this free for all of like figure it out yourself?
Like a free for all, and that's why really, like, when we really started like growing, we realized, we shifted away. Like, we do service private practice and smaller practices, but that's why we kind of deal more with the owners. Like, if you have an owner who then has physicians in a practice, it's usually much more successful because the owner and like the team of owners or investors or entrepreneurs, and they kind of understand the business a little bit better. And then, they have the relationship with the doctors and stuff like that. And those are all obviously like the bigger, the bigger like specialty groups or whatever.
Amazing. So why do you think that the industry as a whole has developed this way from, let's say the 50s and the 60s, where I wasn't alive, so it's hard for me to say, but I assume this is more or less a relatively new issue as populations have grown, as there's more and more doctors. Again, I imagine back in the day that a practice was really well run because kind of the nurses were contributing more to the actual infrastructure. What's created kind of the brokenness in the system? Is it just overload, or are there other issues around, let's say, like technology integration or other things that you guys perceive?
Oh my gosh.
That's like a huge question.
Excellent question though.
Like,
goodness.
Like, let's just take like where they process like information. Like, there's one company that does it okay and they still do it bad, and That's epic, Courtney. Like there's no like how you were saying, the integrations, right? So they usually have to have like 20 softwares that like none of them speak to each other half of the time. The rural hospitals are the worst because they're cheap. And then you're getting like what do? They do the hacking where like their information gets like taken and then they're blackmailed to pay for it to get it
That
back.
really does
Like,
happen.
I mean, it's just like that's such a huge question, but most of the times like the problems really start at the top. So it's whoever, if it's a private practice, it could be like obviously the mindset of the physician. They don't evolve with the times, and if you don't evolve with the times, you're going to get left behind. If it's you know, like a nursing home or a rural hospital, it's usually the efficacy of like how they're running is at the top. It's at the investors. Like what is most important for them? For some of them, it's money, but they sometimes sacrifice too much quality or too much reputation for quick profits. Sometimes it's long-term reputation and they do an amazing job and they have an amazing team. So it's like whatever problems are there, really it depends on their management.
Correct.
Awesome. Well, we got a great question here that I think you guys could speak to. So for someone who's just starting out their practice, like hopefully there are some.
I don't want to go broke. Great question.
What are some tips starting out, or like, is there something that's the most important to look at first? It sounds like there's so much. It sounds really complicated. How do you suggest tackling these like massive amount of different issues, from organization to technology integration to marketing?
Hire us.
Exactly. Just don't even.
That's so funny. I don't want to go broke. I love it. That's such a good question because that's what happens sometimes.
That's what happens. That's what happens.
So give a little context then. I imagine that every doctor starting up a practice has to create a budget. Like they probably don't have that money just in their pocket. Could you give some idea? Obviously there's going to be a range. How much does it cost in general to start a private practice, and how does your guys' services factor into that?
Well, I'll start with this. Obviously, yes, it does vary. If you're a therapist, all you need, right, is a room and a chair and a couch, right? So like just there's certain things that you need, right? So the doctor's, office, you need the whole exam table. So you need to make a list of what you think you're going to be doing. Then also, are you going to lease or are you going to build? Like, so it really does range. I would say, what do you think?
I don't know, but like whatever it is that whatever you think it is, triple it.
Correct.
Or like quadruple it, because usually they always thinking best case scenario. Like I'm going to get my insurance in 8 weeks. And it's like, that's possible, but that's probably not the case.
Correct.
Or these medical supplies are going to come through because I know a guy, and then that falls through. So then they have to spend more. It's like, that's what we've seen, is that they don't, they always think it's going to cost less than it actually does. So triple it. And then also the time, right? They think they're going to be up in 3 months. It usually will take double that. So triple the money and double the time. What do you say, Courtney? I mean, that's what we've seen.
Well, also some of our clients, and Shanae knows this, they're so anxious, right? About like opening.
Right.
That's when you're going to make a mistake. Also,
he said, guys, I need you.
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race, right? You might have to start out and be the one-man show, right? You might have to, then hire the receptionist. It's slow and steady wins the race. You're not going to become like, I don't know, Spokane Medical in 2 seconds. It's not going to happen. Right. So let's also be realistic.
Have a long-term plan, not just a get open right away. Have like a 2-3 year plan laid out that's very conservative. The more conservative you can be, the less likely you're going to be to have to say that plan was no good because of X, Y, and Z.
And I'll also say this. The price. So marketing, like she said, could be like $8,000 to $10,000, like a retainer, right? But you have to make sure that you do your research, right? And you can show the deliverables that they actually have. They should be able to seriously explain to you exactly what their marketing plan is and what you should see as the output.
And what you really need, right? So like if it's like a solo like therapist, or we've worked with RNs and stuff, like we're not going to sell them a $10,000 marketing package because they don't need that, so don't get like conned and oversold. Understand that organic, building a brand may take longer, but it's more, it'll produce more returns like in the long run. Again, this is all like long term, because by the time they come to us, they're so anxious for the credentialing and all that stuff. And they're so in panic that they're like, oh, I need like to get leads. And like, it's just like, no,
like that.
You need to build a real brand and create a real impact in your community. And that's, you don't do like, 24-hour lead gen. Like that's not because what happens is we've seen it. We've had to go in and we're like cleanuppers sometimes.
We're the cleanup
for people that have been conned.
That's
so we go in there. This one guy, he was paying $5,000 a month for this lead gen company. The lead gen company was just sending him a list of names and like numbers every month for $5,000. I'm like, do you even know it? And then like, they would blame it on him if like when he called, they weren't quality. So they'd be like, oh, well, we got you the leads, but you have to sell them. It's like the perfect con. You know what I mean? Like, how do you even know these people are real?
Like, like they could have just bought some, like, they took the $5,000, spent $500 on a list that they got from some other marketer.
Correct.
There you go. Yeah.
And he paid them for like 6 months, $30,000.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
And I'm like, you don't even know if these people are real. And but they're so busy trying to stay afloat and survive that they just like, their invoices go out and they don't even pay attention to what they're really getting or understand. Because it's almost like some marketing companies try to make it confusing on purpose. So it's like, oh, well, you got like 3,000 clicks and this and that. And we did our work, but your team didn't sell it. It's your fault. Where's my next invoice?
Right. So you guys offer consultations for, you do? Okay. So you guys, it sounds like whether you feel like you have a lot of money or you don't have a lot of money, I vouch very hard for education. Like the more you can educate yourself, the more money you're going to save yourself in the long term. So hit up Courtney, hit up Shanae. What is the name of your business, by the way?
MedSnake Media.
MedSnake Media. So hit up MedSnake Media, at least get a consultation so that you can answer some of your questions, understand what questions you should even be asking. Because I think one of the things I'm really hearing about the medical industry is that they don't know what they don't know.
Correct.
Like, they can't be aware of the things that they're unaware of.
Correct.
And because of that, they're in this state of confusion and panic because they have some sense that that it's not working, but they just don't even know what questions sometimes to ask these other companies to understand if it's all bullshit or if it's
exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Even in big hospitals, like the chief marketing officer, usually usually like they have it's crazy, but usually they're like 60 years old. They're usually not that up to like the newest stuff. Just, on average. And what happens is that they're basically managers of other vendors. So let's say they have $1 million marketing spend. They're managing a ton of vendors. And a lot of the times it's like on new strategies that they don't even know if it's like the tracking result. Like they don't know what they don't know, like you're saying. So it's like the CMO is just pouring out money on things that like, and on TV ads, let's say, you know what I mean? Where that like 40,000 could have been like much better used on social or like on old banners. And it's like, what are you doing? But they just have so much to manage and they don't really understand like the newest things. So even like in big conglomerates, sometimes their CEO could use like even more training. And we've kind of been, we're thinking like on the educational resource. That's like what the platform that we're like doing now is thinking, how can we like educate because they reach out to us and a consultation is great, and leading a marketing campaign for them is great, but they're still not learning if we're doing all the work, especially if they have a team. So it's like, if we could train their billers, or we could train their marketing.
It's such a massive issue. You need a massive
Exactly,
solution.
100%. So we're working on developing training for that. To be done by the end of the year, because like it's definitely needed.
No, I agree. I think, I mean, on every level, I think the medical industry's grown so quickly over the past, 20 years. And not just the medical industry, but the technology industry has parallelly grown with it, and they have had to both keep up with just number of people and growth, but also at the same time are trying to integrate new technologies and understand new technologies that, I mean, it's been an almost impossible task without help and without the proper help. And I think it's really awesome that you guys, it sounds like, are pioneering actually quite a lot within your space around being able to make some major changes. I know that pretty much everyone I talk to thinks that it's a pretty broken system here in the United States, but has no idea how to fix it, because it's just in so many different areas where there are issues. But I do think that education is at the heart of all improvement, whether that's on a personal level or organizational level. And so it's really exciting, I think, to hear that you guys are being a part of that and kind of driving the force for that. What are some of these vendors? So I keep hearing you talk about all these different vendors. Are there like certain categories of vendors? Like, let's say, take the $1 million budget organization. What are the different categories of vendors that they are managing and spending money on?
So, first they'll find somebody like, on Courtney's service side. So they'll find somebody that does their insurance credentialing so that they could accept insurance. And even before that, they'll probably find like a management company that says they do all that, but whatever. Then they have to get like their software system and like all of that. And then after that, they have to do the website, which is a nightmare in itself, because how can you build? And that's why we make it easy. Like, we learned all of these things because if you just wait for content from a healthcare company, the website will never get built. So we just do it. You know what I mean? And then they approve it. The website, the social media, then, the billing systems have to be optimized. Then it's like the paid ads, and then it's the community outreach. And it's just, by the time you get to like launch, it's probably like 25 vendors, Courtney?
So I have another question around that. How come they don't find people in-house to do these things? Like, why, especially if they have a big budget, conceivably they could find someone who in-house does these things. Why is that not like a common practice?
Well, they do, but then what happens is that they'll pay the person in-house 70 grand, and the person in-house that's getting paid 70 grand a year, 80 grand a year, is not continuously learning new trends in the market. Is not continuously applying new strategies. Partly because of the culture. Most of the time it's just stagnant. It's not even their fault. They're not do
the same thing over.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's why.
But like, the leadership isn't promoting learning throughout the entire business.
Yeah, and you have to understand, like, the leadership in healthcare, it's usually a much older demographic.
Correct.
So
they already did their learning.
Correct.
No, and some of them are still pioneering, but other ones are really like stuck in their ways. And what it's almost like we're called in sometimes as the plane is crashing and burning, and it's like, okay, now I'm open to new ideas. Save the plane.
Now I'm ready to listen. And the other thing is it's funny because we are kind of fairly new, so we're still hungry, right? So we don't get the 70 grand, we don't get the 100 grand unless we work and really find out what in the hell is going on here, right?
And because they've been jaded already, so they're
they're always been jaded.
You have to be good.
Yeah. So that biller that's sitting there that's making 80 grand, and then you've got 1.5 million in AR.
And imagine the biller that's making 80 grand half the time they know that when Courtney and our other side of the billing team come in, we have to uncover the mistakes.
That's right.
So that's a whole other battle. Like, hey, let us work with you, and we'll
and then they're fighting you while you're trying to help them.
Yeah, because sometimes they've done shady stuff that we uncover, like with the bills, and they really like, in that case, we've seen everything. So in that case, they'll fight the whole process and they'll fight our whole billing team. In other cases, it's like they may not have the most up-to-date technology. Human errors do happen, but in either case, they know that like a team with outside eyes is coming in, their mistakes are going to be uncovered. So we had to learn that early on too. And on the marketing side too, if I come in and I show that you've done nothing with your marketing budget for the past 5 years, like they're going to be like, so it's like, we have to like go in with like white flags. Like we're not here to be anybody's enemy. Like, that's why we want to implement this kind of educational aspect coming into the new year and stuff, because not only could we like go in and save the burning plane, but like we could also train them how to continue, those processes
properly
doing all the work for them.
That's I have to say, you must have some enemies or some people who hate you then, in terms of you coming in and being like, this person. I mean,
totally.
It sounds like you've probably
it's been fired. That's how we learned, is being in those situations. Like, oh, well, how do we tell the owner that this is what we found?
Right.
This person's going to be fired. Like,
I'm curious, how did you navigate that, and what is the proper way that you've learned to do that? Because I'm sure like that even you guys have made some mistakes where you look back and went, man, we probably should have handled this differently or approached it differently. So what are some of the things that you've learned that you'd like to just share with us?
I'll let you answer, Courtney.
Oh my gosh, I was gonna say something, but I'm like, maybe I should say that. I'm sorry, it's funny to me. One is, if you have a meeting with, baby boomers, make sure you wear a suit. We got in trouble one time for that.
Okay.
We were underdressed. And
we were in, the deep South. So another thing is, honesty. Honestly, honesty is the best policy.
It is.
People like us because we're blunt. We do not hide anything. I mean, if we don't hide anything, I might be traveling somewhere. Hey, I'm not going to be here, right?
Yeah.
We don't sugarcoat anything.
And like to give like an applicable example, I would say is like this one company had been extremely jaded and like had spent a ton of unnecessary money, and like it's like we were at the point where this person was like, well, is this going to work or not? And we're like, well, not if you don't fire this person, reallocate that budget. And sometimes it's like, listen, you do this and you save your business. It's the only chance, or you don't. And this is exactly what's going to happen. And sometimes like we have to be like extremely honest with the owner too, and if sometimes they're too attached to the employee, they try to make it survive more, but it just doesn't, it doesn't add up. So then the inevitable happens.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the things I've experienced through sharing honestly and sharing bluntly is that people might not like it at first, but that truth sticks with them and will continue to speak to them. And they usually come around if they want the thing that's in their best interest, which is to succeed. And so it might be uncomfortable at first, but in the end, usually you're like, oh, man, they had a change of heart, didn't they? 1 week later, 2 weeks later.
Even if they don't succeed, they will reach out and be like, oh, yeah, you were right.
Yeah.
And they will give you respect for that, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like they'll reach out and be like,
about anyone.
Yeah.
If they're just telling you like it is. They're not lying. This is what it is. Period.
Like, for one example, like we went to a really big hospital and we were like, listen, this is what you have to do with your budget. Like, this is what's going to work. And, in hospitals, there's boundaries, right? So one department may not try to one up another. There's like whole dramas. So this person was like, I can only get authorization for part of this. And then we were like, well, then it's not worth your time because it's not going to work unless you do all of it. And then, so we walked away. And like 3 months later, he called and he was like, hey, our parent company was here. The parent company owns like 20 other hospitals, including theirs. And their strategy, like they looked at like everyone's strategies and they picked up your guys' strategy because it was like almost all the steps that they had, like, you know, they had done their own data and came back to the marketing departments and to the billing departments with like what they need to do. And like ours outlined everything that they said. And they're like, who, like, which company did this? And it was like, he just called to say, like, he still didn't get the authorization, but he just called to say, like, you guys were right. Like, the parent company even said it. So it's just,
no, that's super cool.
Sometimes it's just limitations, like, on what they could say yes or no to.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like, again, a lot of organizational issues in terms of who's working with who, who's allowed to do what.
Exactly.
It's a very complicated system, especially when bigger companies do get involved. It actually just complicates things more oftentimes than it helps them, it sounds like. So I really want to thank you guys. I'm super grateful that you came on here. I've learned so much through this interview. Are there any things that, one, either you're really, really excited about right now that you're working on, or two, that you just want to leave people with, whether they are in the medical industry or whether they're just, you know, people who use the medical system?
Courtney, you go first.
Wow. I mean, well, I'm going to say what you're doing, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, the educational part. So
that's right. We've launched a course, you know, so I'm super excited. Shanae's put a lot of, you know, thought, and just, it looks amazing. It looks great. And that's just the first thing, you know, that we're putting out. And then we're just going to kind of keep doing that.
So we put out the first course, and then, like I said, we're going to build from there, just on both the marketing side, because there's so many specifics that CMOs should know, right? How we were talking about that. Also, so many people reach out to us. How do I become a biller? How can an operations manager in a private practice like know everything that they should be responsible for? Like, so our focus, like in the next 6 months, like on top of everything else we're doing, is going to be creating these educational resources for, you know, people that want to grow on LinkedIn, and also specific to the healthcare space coming up, because
is there a website that's going to launch on so people can keep it in mind? What is it? Yeah,
it's a growthacademy.global, and then the healthcare one will be MedSnake Growth. So like we're working on building these things out, because like you said, especially with the online thing and them having to learn, it's like we've realized they need like a process to follow even after we do the work. You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Awesome.
And,
go ahead.
I guess my message for them would be, make sure your money's right, because without, you know, revenue, they'll go out of business. And then make sure that they're keeping up with the times and building their brand, because that's how people are going to connect with them. They they should be sharing their story. Like you see now why hospitals, even big hospitals, are positioning certain doctors as influencers. Like let's say they want to push their prosthetic space. They'll position their doctors and prosthetics as influencers to just get more visibility and opportunity and stuff. So they have to build a brand, and they have to have their money right. So make sure that they trust their team, because without trust.
Absolutely. And those are so applicable suggestions to like literally every business.
I know.
Every business needs to have their money right and needs to build a brand. And I would kind of encourage anyone watching this who is in a business, it is never too late to start working on that. Like literally, like it is your plane's crashing. That's the perfect time to start. Like maybe you've never done a real budget before. Maybe you have budget numbers in your head, but you've never written it down and really outlined everything. Start tonight, start today, tomorrow. It will have a massive and immediate impact on some of the decisions that you're making on a daily and regular basis.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again so much for being on. Everyone watching this, I would really appreciate, I know Courtney and Shanae would appreciate it if you shared, if you grabbed the link, shared this live, shared this video to whichever platform that you like to live on, whether that's LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook,
Like
Twitter,
to live on. I like that.
Right, I like that.
Yeah, put it in the comments on someone else's YouTube video. Let's go for it. And just let's get this information out there, because I think the medical industry is a bit shrouded in mystery for a lot of people. They don't understand it. And there was just a lot of clarity that I got through talking to both of you today. So thank you so much for being here.
Welcome.
Thank you guys all
Thank you for the invite. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. You guys
Even
all
though we're like in our pajamas.
I know.
I know it's a little bit late for the East Coasters. I'm out here on the West Coast. It's just about my dinner time. But thank you guys so much for making the time for me tonight.